Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. My name is Ethan Graves, 48, and this is a story about love, betrayal, and the price of dignity. 24 years ago, I married the woman I thought I'd grow old with, Sophie. She was beautiful, fiercely ambitious, and had this infectious laugh that made everyone around her feel like life was lighter, easier somehow. When she laughed, it was impossible not to smile. For a while, we were golden. 2 years in, we had our daughter, Clara, and for a while after that, it felt like we were living the dream. But somewhere along the line, things shifted. Sophie became restless. She wanted more. More freedom, more success, more life, as she put it. Meanwhile, I was grinding it out. I worked long hours as a project manager at a mid-tier construction firm. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills, kept the lights on, and gave us stability. I missed birthdays. I skipped vacations. I poured everything I had into building a life that I thought was for all three of us. Then Sophie got that big promotion at her marketing firm, and something changed. It was like she looked around and no longer recognized the life we'd built. Or maybe she saw it and just didn't want it anymore. One night, we sat down for dinner. She wasn't angry or distant, just still, like she'd already made peace with something. Halfway through the meal, she put her fork down and looked me in the eye. "I'm not happy, Ethan," she said. "I haven't been for a while. I need to rediscover who I am." It wasn't some screaming match. There was no affair to unravel or accusations to hurl. Just that. Calm. Clinical. Like she'd rehearsed it 100 times in her head before saying it out loud. I stared at her for a second. "Sophie, can we talk to someone? A counselor, a therapist? Just give us a chance to work through this." She shook her head. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I've already made up my mind." Within 6 months, the papers were signed. She kept the house. I moved into a small apartment 2 towns over. It wasn't much, barely enough room for Clara's things when she stayed over, but I made it work. We agreed on joint custody. On paper, at least. But it never felt joint. Clara was only 12, and Sophie, whether intentional or not, gradually shaped her world around her new life. I became the every other weekend dad. I showed up with groceries. I helped with homework. I never missed a school event. Paid my share of everything. And sometimes Sophie's too, when she was a little tight this month. And then came Waylon Morin. 1 year after the divorce, Sophie introduced him to Clara. Finance executive. Clean cut. Wealthy. The kind of guy who probably never had to clip coupons or worry about overtime. He had a boat, took them on ski trips, bought Clara designer sneakers, and the newest phone every Christmas. When Clara turned 14, she started calling him Pa. It stung. God, it stung like hell. But I swallowed it. No scenes. No arguments. I just tried to be present in the ways I could. I taught her how to drive, sat in the passenger seat while she nervously navigated neighborhood streets. I listened when she talked about her passion for environmental science, helped her research colleges, encouraged her dreams. And when the time came, I financed her entire college tuition without student loans. Sophie and Waylon never offered to pay a dime. Not once. And I never brought it up. I just wanted Clara to feel secure, to know that no matter what, I was there. I didn't need applause for it. I didn't need my name on checks or speeches. I just needed her to feel supported. Over the years, though, I watched my role quietly diminish. Fewer calls, less involvement. I wasn't invited to father-daughter events anymore, not because they forgot, but because Waylon had already RSVP'd. I remember calling the school once, asking if I could attend a small awards night Clara was part of. The woman on the phone hesitated before saying, "Oh, Mr. Moore confirmed attendance already." I thought that covered it. That stung. I missed her graduation dinner too. Found out after the fact that it was just easier to have it at Waylon's place. Clara texted me a blurry photo of the cake. No invite. No explanation. Still, I told myself, this is just a phase. She's young. She'll come around. But then came the wedding. Clara got engaged at 25 to a nice enough guy, Caleb. She FaceTimed me with the news, her eyes bright, her smile beaming. "Dad," she squealed. Guess what? I already knew from the look on her face. "You said yes." She held up the ring. "Can you believe it?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Congratulations, sweetheart." I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel it waver. "Of course I'll help with the wedding," I said before she even asked. "Whatever you need." Over the next several months, I paid for the venue deposit, her dress, catering, even chipped in for the floral arrangements when the numbers went over budget. I told her it was my honor. I told her I wanted her to have everything perfect. She thanked me, briefly, politely, but never once did she ask me about walking her down the aisle. Then the invitation arrived. Formal cream card stock, gold trim. Elegant. On the back, under the ceremonial details, I saw the words, "Giving the bride away, Mr. Waylon Moore." My chest went cold. My name wasn't listed anywhere. Not as father of the bride. Not as host. Not even a footnote. A few days later, Clara called me, casual, breezy. Just checking in. I asked, "Why is Waylon giving you away?" There was a pause. Then she said, "He's been there, Dad. Like, really present. And I don't want to hurt Mom's feelings by making it a big deal between you two." Really present? I repeated, quiet but firm. "Clara, who did you call during your panic attacks before finals? Who paid your tuition? Who drove 6 hours in a snowstorm to pick you up when your car broke down? Who never missed a single birthday, even if we had to celebrate it alone, a day early?" She didn't respond at first. Then she sighed. "Dad, can't you just be okay with it? This isn't about you. It's my day." I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just said, "Thank you for letting me know." And on the morning of her wedding, I didn't show up. I received a few calls that day. Some angry, some confused. Sophie texted me, real mature, Ethan. That was her way. Passive-aggressive wrapped in faux concern. I didn't reply. And Waylon, of course, didn't say anything. Naturally. But it was Clara's voicemail that stayed with me. "Dad, I noticed you weren't there. I hope you're okay. I thought you'd understand. Anyway, I love you." She sounded uncertain, a little fragile. Still, I didn't call back. 3 months passed. I threw myself into work, took up fishing again, something I hadn't done in decades. Started reading books I'd long shelved, always telling myself I'd get to them someday. And now I had time. For the first time in years, I had no one to worry about but myself. Then, one quiet afternoon in December, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there she was. Clara. She looked different. Older. Unsure of herself. Her makeup was smudged like she'd rubbed her eyes too many times. Her voice, smaller than I remembered. "Dad, I'm sorry," she said. I stepped aside and let her in. She sat down on the same couch she used to fall asleep on as a kid, her legs curled up under her as they once had been when she watched Saturday morning cartoons with chocolate milk in hand. I sat across from her, waiting. She took a breath. "I'm sorry for choosing Waylon, for pushing you aside, for letting Mom control the narrative for so long." I said nothing, just listened. Every word she said felt like it had arrived years too late. "I thought," she began again, "I thought he was doing it out of love. You know? Like, he was just filling in." She paused. "But when I told him I wanted to get a second degree, he told me to take out loans. Just like that. No offer to help. Nothing." I nodded, slowly. She glanced at me, as if searching for some reaction. "When Caleb and I had a fight, he told me I was being too emotional, that I needed to stop overthinking." Her voice cracked. "He never came, not like you used to." And then, eyes welling up, she whispered, "You always came, Dad." I just nodded. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting. Then she said it. "I want to fix this. I miss you." I looked at her. Really looked. And what I saw wasn't just my daughter. It was the reflection of every scar I'd carried quietly over the years. The missed holidays. The birthdays where I waited for her to call. The nights I wept in silence after dropping her off, telling myself she'd come around. The love I gave when I had nothing left to give. I folded my arms and studied her. Not the tearful daughter I'd once carried to bed after she fell asleep on the couch, but the grown woman who stood by while I was erased, rebranded as inconvenient history. "I have to ask you something, Clara," I said, my tone calm but firm. She looked up. "Anything, Dad." I held her gaze. "Why now?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why did it take all these years? Why after the wedding? After calling another man Dad? After I paid for your future without so much as a thank you? Why now?" Her lips parted, but no words came. I didn't let her fumble. "You came here because Waylon, your so-called father figure, refused to help. You wanted another degree. He said no. And suddenly, here you are, on my doorstep, holding out your pain like a currency I'm supposed to accept." "That's not true," she said quickly, though her voice faltered. You just realized I was the backup plan?" I cut in sharper now. "The emergency exit. The fallback. Not because you wanted to rebuild this relationship, but because the man you chose to replace me wouldn't open his checkbook." "Dad." "No," I snapped. "You don't get to dad me now. You had a father when it was convenient. When he bought you things, took you skiing, gave you a place in the front row. You let him walk you down the aisle. And now that the illusion's shattered, you remember me?" She shrank back, wounded. But I wasn't finished. "You're just like your mother," I said coldly. "Entitled. Thankless. Selfish. Sophie traded respect for status. And you? You sold your integrity for comfort. And now you come to me hoping to patch the roof after the house already burned down." "Please don't say that," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm not like her." "You are," I said. "You let her voice become yours, her bitterness become your compass." You made your choices. Repeatedly. And now that you're out in the cold, you think my door should still be open. She started to cry then. Quiet tears. But I didn't reach for her. You came here for money, Clara. Not love. Not reconciliation. And I won't let you guilt your way back into my life because Waylon turned out to be exactly what I always knew he was, temporary. I stood up and pointed toward the door. Get out. She stared at me, stunned, mouth quivering like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Now. She stood slowly, as if waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. As she reached the threshold, I said one last thing. Next time you think about calling someone dad, remember the one who showed up. And remember why he finally stopped. Then I shut the door. Hard. And this time, I didn't feel peace. I felt clean. And as I closed the door behind her, for the first time in my life, I felt peace. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just peace. 3 weeks after Clara left my doorstep in tears, the silence settled in like an old friend. Familiar. Heavy. But not unwelcome. I didn't expect to hear from her again, not anytime soon. She'd said her piece, and I'd said mine. That should have been the end. A clean break, as clean as those things ever get. But regret doesn't operate on logic. It spreads like smoke, slow, suffocating, impossible to ignore. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind I'd come to appreciate. A mug of black coffee in one hand, a novel in the other, sunlight warming the floorboards just right. Then came the knock, 3 soft taps. I already knew. I set the book down and walked to the door. When I opened it, there they were, Clara and Sophie, standing on my porch like ghosts from a chapter I'd already closed. Sophie wore a long black coat, her hair tied back. Her face looked more tired than I remembered, like time had finally decided to catch up to her. Clara wouldn't even look up, her hands wrapped tight around her sleeves. Ethan, Sophie said. Her voice was careful, not warm, not cold, just careful. Can we talk? I stared at them, just for a moment. Then I stepped aside. They walked in quietly, sat down on the couch, the same couch where Sophie once nursed Clara as a baby. The same couch where I sat alone the night they both left, staring at the front door like it might open again. Funny how furniture remembers everything. Sophie cleared her throat, shifted uncomfortably. I came here, she began, because I owe you an apology. I leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. I didn't say a word. She looked straight ahead, like she couldn't quite meet my eyes. I know what I did years ago, she said. How I made Clara believe you weren't really there for her. Clara flinched a little, her eyes still fixed on the floor. I see it now, Sophie continued. Waylon wasn't a better man. He was just convenient. And I let him take a place in her life that never should have been his to claim. I raised an eyebrow. You let him? She nodded. Swallowed. I encouraged it. Clara shrank beside her. I resented you after the divorce, Sophie said, her voice softening but not breaking. I told myself you were the reason I was unhappy. And I poisoned Clara with my bitterness. I wanted her to lean toward Waylon, because it made me feel like I'd won something. There it was. The confession. Raw. Too little. Too late. She hesitated, then said, I saw you at the wedding. I didn't react. You were outside the venue, sitting in your truck for a while, weren't you? I said nothing. Just sipped my coffee. She looked down. I should have come to you then, Sophie said, her voice low, the weight of something long buried pressing on each word. But I was too proud. And now, after watching Waylon walk away from Clara emotionally, she finally understands who really showed up. All those years. The room was quiet, too quiet. Even the clock on the wall seemed to tick softer, as if it didn't want to interrupt. Then Clara spoke. Dad, she said, her voice barely holding together. I'm sorry. I let Mom's voice become my own. I thought I was doing the right thing until she stopped, swallowed, then continued. Until I realized the only man who never asked for anything in return was the one I pushed to the back row. I looked at her, really looked. Her eyes were wet. Her face was raw with sincerity. She meant it. Every word. But inside, I felt hollow. Not angry. Not vindicated. Just done. I sighed and set the coffee down on the side table. You know what the hardest part was? I asked, keeping my voice calm, measured. It wasn't being left out of the wedding. It wasn't the money, or even the humiliation. They both looked at me. It was realizing that everything I gave, every sacrifice, every dollar, every missed opportunity in my own life, meant nothing to you. Sophie wiped her eyes, sniffling. Ethan, I know we can't undo it. But maybe. Shut up, I said, cutting in gently. We can't. And we shouldn't pretend otherwise. I turned to Clara. Her hands were clasped in her lap, shaking slightly. I used to love you. I told her, my voice soft but resolute. You hear that, kid? Used to. And I've learned to stop setting myself on fire just to keep other people warm. Her lips quivered. Can we rebuild? I stood, slowly, and walked toward the front door. I opened it. Not abruptly, just enough to let the message settle. You already built something else, with someone else, I said. You called someone else Dad. You let someone else walk you into a new life while I stood outside. I turned back to them. I think it was for the best. Gave me a clarity, how much I matter. Sophie rose to her feet. Please, Ethan, you're a good man. I see that now. And I hate that I made you feel disposable. I wasn't disposable, Sophie, I replied quietly. You just thought I was. They both stood at the threshold again, hoping, maybe, for a different ending. But I had already written the final chapter. I hope this is the end and I won't see you ever again. And I closed the door. Not with anger. Not with revenge. But with peace. Because sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself, for the first time in a very long time. Now for the second story. My name is Theodore Smith. I'm a 52-year-old civil engineer from upstate New York. And if you told me a year ago that a simple piece of mail would completely sever my relationship with my only daughter, I would have laughed in disbelief. But that's exactly what happened. And the wound it left behind still aches on quiet evenings. My daughter Gianna was born when I was just 28. Her mother, Abigail, and I had a good run. 8 years of marriage filled with the usual highs and lows. After the divorce, Gianna was 5. It was messy, not because of infidelity or money, but because Abigail and I were simply done. Emotionally exhausted. We tried co-parenting, and for a while it worked. I had Gianna every other weekend, all holidays. And I never missed a dance recital, a parent-teacher meeting, or a doctor's appointment. I watched her grow from a little girl obsessed with glitter and fairy tales into a sharp, kind young woman with a passion for writing. I paid for her private school, her braces, her out-of-state college tuition, even when it meant sacrificing vacations, buying used cars, and taking on extra projects just to make ends meet. Abigail eventually remarried, a man named Samuel. I didn't think much of him at first. He was polite, the typical safe stepdad type. Worked in finance, coached Little League, smiled too much. Gianna liked him. Over the years, their relationship grew, and I respected that. I wanted her to feel safe and loved in both homes. That was all that mattered. Or so I thought. A few months ago, a thick ivory envelope arrived in my mailbox. I knew immediately it was from Gianna. I had been expecting her wedding invitation. I smiled as I held it, until I read the name on the front. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Carter invite you to the wedding of their daughter Gianna Carter to James Anderson. I read it 3 times. Gianna Carter. I felt the floor shift under me. No Smith. No trace of the name I had proudly passed down. No phone call to tell me she was making the change. No explanation. Nothing. I sat down at the kitchen table, heart pounding. I wasn't angry, not immediately. First, I was confused. Then numb. Then something deeper crept in. Betrayal. I called her. No answer. I sent a short message. Received the invitation. Surprised by the name. We should talk. 2 days. No reply. Finally, I reached out to Abigail. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was tight. She made that decision a while ago, Dan. She wanted to feel connected to the family she's built with us. It wasn't meant to hurt you. Not meant to hurt me. I repeated, my voice cracking despite my effort to stay calm. You all knew, and said nothing. Abigail sighed on the other end. This isn't about you. She just wanted to start her new life clean. Start clean. Like I was dirt. That weekend, I sat down at my desk and wrote Gianna a letter. No anger. No shouting. Just the truth. Gianna, I received your wedding invitation. It took my breath away, but not for the reasons you might have hoped. I didn't know you changed your last name. You never told me. You didn't ask how I'd feel. You just erased it. Like it never mattered. Let me be clear. I'm not upset because you love your stepfather. I'm glad he's been kind to you. I'm hurt because for 25 years, I've been your father. I held your hand through nightmares, coached you through math tests, helped you pick your first car, and spent nights worrying when you didn't call. I didn't expect a parade, but I expected respect. You can choose the name you want. That's your right. But you don't get to rewrite history. You don't get to pretend I wasn't there. I won't be attending your wedding. This isn't about punishment. It's about peace. I need time to process what this means for our relationship going forward. Take care of yourself. Dad. I sent the letter, turned off my phone, and took a 3-day hiking trip to the White Mountains. No service. No distractions. Just space. When I returned, my phone was flooded. Messages from Abigail. From mutual friends. And finally, from Gianna. At first, her texts were defensive. You're overreacting. It was just a name. Samuel's been more of a father to me than you ever were. That one stung. Not because it was true, but because she believed it. Then came the voicemail. Her voice was thick with tears. Dad, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to make things easier with Mom and Samuel. I didn't think you'd care this much. I realize now how much that name meant to you. I messed up. I'm sorry. Please don't cut me out of your life. But something in me had changed. It wasn't about the name anymore. It was about value, about whether my role in her life had been acknowledged or discarded the moment it was no longer convenient. I didn't reply, not for weeks. Her wedding came and went. I spent the day with my brother, fixing up my old boat. We shared beers and stories, watching the sun dip behind the trees and cast gold across the lake. Peaceful, quiet. Later, I saw photos of the event online. Her smiling with Samuel, arm in arm. Her bouquet glowing in the soft evening light. Beneath the caption, Gianna Carter and James Anderson, a perfect new beginning. I felt nothing. Not bitterness. Not sadness. Just acceptance. Months passed. Gianna reached out again. She wanted to meet for coffee. To talk. To explain everything in person. But by then, I had already made my peace. I refused to meet her. But some choices come with consequences. Not as punishment, but as reality. I wouldn't be her fallback anymore. The invisible parent in the background. She cried. She begged. But I didn't go back. And Gianna, a mutual friend, told me she's expecting her first child. She's been going through old photos lately, baby albums, school memories, birthday videos. A few weeks ago, she reached out again. Hey Dad, she'd written. Do you still have the letter you wrote me when I left for college? I've been thinking about it. I'd really like a copy, if that's okay. Maybe she's starting to remember. Maybe the weight of choices is sinking in. But I've moved on. Not out of anger. Out of self-worth. Then, just a few weeks ago, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was from Gianna. Dad, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Or if you'll even want to. I was angry. I was defensive. I didn't realize what I was giving up until it was gone. Samuel never tried to replace you. That was all me. I thought if I could just blend in. If I could make my world simpler, it would make the broken parts of my past feel less painful. But instead, I erased the one person who was always there. You weren't perfect, but you were present. And I see now how rare that is. I understand if you've moved on. If I were you, I probably would have too. I just wanted you to know. I remember. I remember everything. And I miss you. Love, Gianna. I stared at that letter for a long time. It didn't fix things. It didn't erase the silence, the choices, the damage. But it was something. A beginning, maybe. Or an ending. I wasn't sure. I didn't write back. Not right away. Instead, I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the same box where I kept her baby photos. Her kindergarten drawings. The homemade Father's Day cards with crooked hearts and glitter glue. It belonged there. Part of our story, even if the chapters had turned. Now, when I walk along the lake trail near my house, I sometimes imagine her walking beside me. Not the bride in the fancy dress. Not the woman who changed her name. But the little girl in rain boots, skipping beside me, holding my hand, asking with wide eyes, Dad, do you think ducks can be pets? And I'd laugh, tug my cap down against the drizzle, and say, only if you promise to teach them manners. I let that version of her stay with me. She's easier to forgive. Maybe one day, if she ever truly wants to know me again, not just feel less guilty, I'll be here, not waiting, just living. Because I've learned that sometimes, being a father means holding on. And sometimes, it means letting go, with grace. Names can be changed. Invitations can be rewritten. But history, real history, is unshakable. It lives in scraped knees, late-night phone calls, and the quiet way a child leans into your shoulder when they feel safe. And while Gianna may one day teach her child how to spell Whitmore, she'll remember who first taught her how to write her name. That's better. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.